We find ourselves here in Oklahoma, sitting here with Hato Anjini, man who brings nations together. He is a Seneca CAYUGA elder, and he has a great George Washington story, which I've conned him, you can see where I twisted his arm, into telling.
One day my youngest daughter had come home from school, and she had learned about George Washington and how great of a guy he was, and not telling a lie, and his wooden teeth and everything, and how he was the father of our country. And I couldn't figure out where I should draw the line at telling her the truth. But I told her that, your teacher is paid to tell you a story, and she's going to tell you a certain story, and she's not going to tell you the correct story, or she's going to omit certain things. And my youngest daughter, she's real intelligent. She gets a whole. You'd think she was 16, and she's quite a bit younger. But so we started telling her about. I can't recall right off the top of my head. I just lost the name that we had for George Washington, but we called him the Town Destroyer. And he had sent out generals to burn our cornfields and burn our longhouses. And there's actually towns in New York and around the area that have names to do with the burning and the trying to obliterate Senecas and CAYUGAs. One town is called Horseheads in New York, and it got its name because they cut the heads off of our horses and lined them up to show what they had done when the soldiers would come through and try to wipe everybody out. So, like I said, I didn't want to overload my young daughter with too many horror stories, but I wanted her to know the truth. And I knew what would happen, so the next day she comes back to me and said that her teacher never heard any of that stuff, and that stuff didn't happen. So I Googled Town Destroyer, didn't Google George Washington, I Googled Town Destroyer, and all these articles came up about George Washington and what he'd done and what, the our side of the story, I guess. And but I told my daughter again, your teacher is paid to tell you a story, not necessarily the whole story, but they're paid to tell you a certain story. It kind of ended there as far as her going back to school and telling him, that her teacher was wrong. but yeah.
I grew up on this is very unfair, but I have one of my favorite George Washington stories. If you don't mind me sliding it in behind your George Washington story, I grew up on a Mohawk reservation, and history, like you would imagine, is a smidge different than what you learned in school. Because in school you just shut your ears out, going, "I know that's not true because what I've learned as a child." Anyway, the same things you're saying, identical. I meet this other historian at the Masonic Temple in Washington, D.C., which is up there for George Washington because he was a Mason, and that's where he, chased all his prostitutes and things. I'm sorry, that's where he did all his socializing. Did I say that? It slipped out. He did all his socializing in Old Town Alexandria. That's where the Masonic Temple is. Well, I meet this guy, and he says, "My goodness, you're such a historian. Can you show me the Masonic Temple?" I says, "I've never been in there, didn't have interest in it. It's for George Washington. I don't care." Well, I do. So we go up in there. Beautiful building. It tapers up to a point, but the elevators taper up too. They go up at the only place in the world they go up at an angle. And it's so tight at the top, they have to mismatch the two and timing. Because there's only one door and two elevators. It's interesting. I love architecture. But to make a short story long, we get up there. There's this whole tour of maybe 40 Australian New Zealanders on a tour of Masonic Temple in there with us, me and a white guy, George Washington fan, And the guide, this sweet young girl in a little green outfit and a Smokey the Bear hat, and she's saying about George Washington. He did this, he did that. His main crop was corn and wheat and rice. And I went, ma'am, I raised my hand. She goes, oh, sir, do you have a question? Well, yeah, his main crop was marijuana, wasn't it? And she went, what? Yes, hemp was one of the main crops because Virginia, a lot of that stuff doesn't grow well, but hemp really grew well, and they made ropes out of it and clothing, and then later people smoked it. Okay, and anyway, George Washington was, his nickname was, whatever it was, I forgot, and that was friend of the Indians. And I raised my hand, she goes, she ignores me, and I'm jumping up and down raising my hand, she's ignoring me. George Washington loved the Indians, and the only reason that their culture survived is because of his caring and his interest in history to keep. And I goes, okay, that's it. Ma'am, is this the same George Washington? I'm Mohawk Indian, and our nickname for him was the burner of villages. And is it true that he sent poison blankets infested with pox into the Indians and gave them to the Indians? And he sent Sherman there. In his memoirs, it says, go up into the Iroquois Nation and burn everything. Kill as many people as you can. Drive them off the land. Well, I got almost to that point. I didn't quite drive off the land. And these two guerrillas dressed in National Park Service clothes, uniforms, they were huge, with little Smokey the Bear hats, one on each side of me, picked me up by the elbows and gave me a personal tour of the parking lot downstairs, in which they asked me to take a good look at the Masonic Temple because please do not come back here again. They were very polite, and they did speak English through the drool. Anyway, that was my George Washington story. Oh. So yes, if you're interested out there, America or the world, read George Washington's memoirs, and he clearly states in there that the Indians are too powerful, they're politically getting too strong, we must destroy them, separate and destroy. And Valley Forge, the only reason he's alive is that they rescued him at Valley Forge. Read that in his memoirs too. Great, and then after he sent Sherman up to burn, pillage, rape, whatever he could do to make their life miserable. Thank you very much.